Blessings, good evening. Tonight we have some questions, Dhamma questions have come in. So make an attempt to answer them. First question. Please suggest how we can practice with feelings of grief that come with the sudden loss of a loved one. Well, this is an extremely common kind of question and experience that probably almost everyone, maybe not absolutely everyone in the world, but most people will experience, I think, sadness, grief at the loss of a loved one sooner or later in their life. Maybe that's the starting point, if you can, just to see how universal, how normal it is, because nobody lives forever. We won't live forever, our loved ones don't. So sooner or later we have to separate from our loved ones through death. Perhaps it is harder if it's a more sudden kind of death, unexpected death, like people have stroke or heart attack or accidental death perhaps. That maybe it's more of a shock to the system. I think even people who have family members, loved ones who have a prolonged illness before they die, maybe someone who's older and is perhaps bedridden or just very weak for months or even years. Even then, when you talk to the loved ones after the person has died, they also say it's still a shock to the system and difficult to accept, even though they've had perhaps many months or years to prepare. It just points out the depth of our attachment, doesn't it, to our loved ones. What do we attach to as human beings? Well, the Buddha pointed out we attach to the 5 khandhas: body, feelings, perceptions, thought formations, sense consciousness. We cling, we attach to these 5 khandhas, and this is a basis for our suffering. Then we attach to other people as well. Parents, partners, siblings, children, loved ones, friends, relatives. Your khandhas, when you're not fully aware of their impermanent nature and not seeing the lack of self in them, well, your khandhas will tend to attach to other people's khandhas. And this is going on often quite unconsciously. We're not aware. Through our life we form bonds, attachments with the people around us. It brings both love and hate together. And quite often when somebody you say, I love this person, and you love them and then they die, if you think back, well, there will also be moments when you perhaps were angry with them or hated them. And this clinging to the khandhas, clinging to our feelings about someone, clinging to the idea of that person as a self, as a person, and then clinging to ourselves, means we experience both love and hate in various forms throughout the length of this relationship. So if you've been with someone for a long time, the bond, the attachment is very strong, very deeply ingrained in your citta, your mind. So when they go, even if you've had a bit of time to prepare, it's like part of you is pulled away because you've attached into your own 5 khandhas, your own body and mind, and then you're also attaching to them. And so literally it's like they've gone through death, and it's like they pull a bit of you with them. This is why we try to contemplate the impermanent nature of our life, the changing nature of human existence every day. I know it's difficult to sort of pick that up once somebody's died, because it's happened, but ideally before you get to that point through life, you're reflecting on separation, impermanence, the inevitability of separation through death, long before it happens. Once it has happened and you've experienced that shock, and it can be very traumatic and put you into depression, sadness, you have to be very patient, don't you, with those strong emotions. So patience will help. As those emotions come up and colour your way of thinking. But there's a number of different reflections that can help. Excuse me. You're aiming to recollect or remember the good of that person who's passed away is one vital, I would say, vital reflection at this time if you're experiencing grief. Think about the good of that person, what they did in their life that was good, their good qualities, good actions, what you know about them, what you've heard about them, whatever you can remember, rather than just dwelling on the sense of loss and the separation. You're bringing your mind to reflect on that person's passing in a balanced way. So it's sad at the loss, but there's also something to remember that's good. And you have to work to bring your mind to think of that. Another reflection is the fact that it's very ordinary when someone dies, in the sense, of course, we don't want them to die, but when it happens, it's just a natural part of the process of life. Sooner or later we all die. We have to accept that. And maybe to bring the reflection back to yourself, well, they've died, and you see how sad you are at the death of this loved one, but you also will die one day. And come back to reflect on that. How do I want to live now? I've lost this person, they've passed away. How am I going to spend the rest of my days, my life? Because I too will die. So you're using the reflection, someone has passed away, it's a sad thing, but you're also learning from it and reflecting on impermanence. And of course, if that person that passes away is really close to you, you can gain some real insight into the impermanent nature of life, because it will hit you hard, and at first it may knock you over mentally or physically even, but over time you come to terms with it, and you are reflecting all the time, hopefully, that life is impermanent. We won't be together forever. And another one I often bring up also is like the person who's passed away that we're grieving for. We feel sad that they've gone, that we've lost them. Well, they probably would not want us to be grieving. They want us to be happy if they love us as we love them. If it's happened that they've died, well, you wouldn't want them to be sort of, or you wouldn't think of them some sitting there wherever they are. We don't know, don't you? When somebody's died, you don't know what happens next. But if they were around in some other form, you wouldn't want them sad as you are sad. They would probably be wanting you to move on with your life, accept the impermanence, accept the ending, accept the feelings of grief that come up, because they naturally arise, but then to move on and let them go. So grief is not something to indulge in. It's not something to hold on to, it's something to accept, acknowledge, but then let go of. And hopefully over time, after the initial shock, the strong emotions that come up, maybe you can then look in a more calm way back at the relationship with the person who died, clear up any regrets about things that happen. Maybe sometimes we make mistakes or things go wrong in relationships. So to forgive them, just as you would hope they forgive you. And then to remember the good of the person, the time you spent together, or the goodness of their life, whether it's with you or with others. And then to move on and set your own goals for your own life, because you know you won't be around forever. So there is quite a lot you can do with grief, even though it's hard to be with as a feeling, as an emotion. But try not to let it weigh you down or paralyze you, but to accept it, but then learn how you can move on from it. And you can move on from it if it's in what you might call normal grief, sadness. These are moods, mental states that arise and pass away. And if you're practicing any forms of meditation, developing mindfulness, calm, insight, meditation, or you use those tools, those practices we've done, and bring them to bear on our feelings of grief and sadness, and see that they're impermanent, they arise, they pass away, they're based on attachment. See the suffering of that, start cultivating more skillful qualities of mind that will help you let go of the more unskillful qualities of attachment, aversion, dislike. And we don't like losing people, so often there's a lot of aversion in there as well. All the different emotions that may come up around grief, around death. In the long run, our aim is to practice, to develop mindfulness and wisdom towards our experience, so that we can understand it better and let go, move on. And of course, on the most basic level, in Buddhism we have merit making. It's the sort of traditional response to death. We have funeral services, merit making, rituals, ceremonies, practices, but there's a lot of scope for making merit, meaning making good karma, developing good things for the dead or in the name of the dead person. There's a lot of choice there, how you do that, what you do, how you do, and so meditation is making merit, keeping precepts, listening to Dhamma is making merit, discussing the Dhamma like this is making merit, as well as making actual offerings, charitable offerings, supporting Sangha, but also supporting good causes that you're happy to support in the name of the dead person. You can do this, and that also helps you to do skillful things at a time when you're feeling sad. So it could be something as simple, if you do meditate already and then someone you love passes away, well, you can meditate in memory of this person. You do your 30 minutes or your 1 hour meditation, whatever time, as a dedicated act to the memory of that person. And that may even energize you. If it's someone special like a teacher, particularly a meditation teacher such as Ajahn Chah or other meditation teachers that you have been close to or have faith in, well, that can really energize your practice when you practice in memory of that teacher. And you might find it helps you to put more effort into your practice even though they've gone and it's sad, but it motivates you, energizes you to practice. But it could similarly be a loved one departed loved one, whoever, you meditate for them or in memory of that person. And it can spur you on at a time when you're feeling unenthusiastic, fed up because this person you love or like has passed away. But when you make it as a special practice of making merit, meditating for them, then it can help you through. And of course, if you're meditating, you bring up more mindfulness, reflect on impermanence, reflect on and make effort to abandon unskillful states of mind. This can help you through the grief process very well. So there is plenty you can do, even though it's not an easy time. I would keep coming back to Dhamma practice for this. Next question. Is it worth practicing meditation when my mind never seems to be peaceful for very long? Short answer is yes, keep going, because everybody has to go through that. Even the word peaceful, there's peaceful and there's peaceful. There's more peaceful than before, even though you're not fully peaceful. Or there's fully peaceful, meaning nibbana, the highest peace. The santi, the peace of nibbana is the highest peace. Well, there's that. But then most people are not yet, haven't reached nibbana, or are not even just about to reach nibbana perhaps. But most people can meditate and feel more peaceful than before. But it requires effort, of course. And part of meditation practice is developing skillful ways to bring up effort, to make the effort. There's a whole set of things that will help you there when you're feeling unenthusiastic, or full of doubt, self-doubt, or doubt about whether it's really worth it. Generally, we recommend go back to basics. Listen to the Dhamma, reflect on the Dhamma, on the Buddha, the Dhamma, the Sangha. Remind yourself why you began meditating, whenever you first started, if you can remember what the sort of original motivation was. Remember past experiences where you did feel more peaceful and calm, even if it's only occasionally. They will remind you what you can do and what the potential you have is in you. And most meditators, I find, have at least one or two times when they really felt very different than normal, more calm, or some clear insight arose that helped them let go of some suffering. So sometimes you need to remind yourself of those past experiences, even if currently your state of mind is very disturbed, agitated, restless, lazy. There'll be a few different things we experience on a daily basis. Sometimes you need to go back to remind yourself why you meditate, what you've experienced before, and then realize that there's always the potential for that in every time you meditate, however little peace or clarity or mindfulness you feel you're experiencing. The potential for improvement is always there. And most meditators say when their mind settles down, mindfulness improves. They always have this sense of, oh, why didn't I do this before? Or it's like, yeah, of course, this is how it should be. And it's like the obvious thing, to let go of all the other stuff that was bothering you. It just becomes very obvious at that moment. And that can be just around the corner. I mean, when you're not peaceful in meditation, that's just your mind grasping at different objects, usually with craving, with attachment, craving for things we like, fantasizing, imagining, wanting, and then craving related to things we don't like, wanting to get rid of. And that may include the very state of mind you're experiencing. You're not happy with it, and you want to be peaceful. So that's another reflection. If you have a lot of desire to get results from your meditation, to be a certain way, to be a certain kind of person, to have a certain kind of peaceful state, or if you don't feel your experience is matching that desire, then you get disappointed quickly. Our own expectations can fuel more discontent and suffering in meditation. So come back to the basic practice of developing the mindfulness, being patient, putting effort in, and then reflecting on what's going on. And sometimes we need to reflect on what is disturbing us if we feel disturbed, unhappy in our meditation. Reflect on what's going on. Why? Where's it coming from? What's happening? There may be something obvious that's happened that's stirred you up, and you can see, oh, it's because of this. Other times it's more subtle, but we also need to reflect on what's going on and try and learn from it. So don't always measure your practice in terms of results. Often, the development of states of calm, insight, feelings of peace is quite subtle, and sometimes you gain some feeling of peace that you can notice, it's tangible. Other times you're not really aware of it, but also look at the results over a period of time, like 6 months, 1 year, a few years even. You might notice you are generally more calm for the meditation you've done, however little time you've put into it. Generally you'll notice it's helped you in different ways. And be open to that. So notice when you feel more calm, and sometimes there are insights we get from our meditation which we don't realize are coming from our meditation. If you've sincerely practiced a meditation for a period of time, continuously or regularly, there'll be things you notice about yourself, about your life. You may make changes in your habits, in your behavior. You may change attitudes, change ways of thinking because you're becoming more aware of yourself. And it can be a very slow, subtle process. And the meditation is facilitating that, and yet you may not have what you might call an amazing meditation where you're really peaceful and it's something very special. Nevertheless, you may have these small moments of insight that build up, and small steps along the path, and just coming to understand things better. It's not always instant or in a big sort of loud way. Often there's very small incremental understandings and insights that come up through the practice, and not even when we're meditating. It can be at totally other times. Because the power of the karma you make when you attempt to develop mindfulness, calm your mind, when you're reflecting on the Dhamma, whether you're reflecting on karma, cause and effect, what is good karma, bad karma, reflecting on the 3 characteristics, impermanence, unsatisfactoriness, not self. This karma is so powerful, has a very powerful conditioning effect in a good way on our mind. And it can kind of have its knock-on or resultant effect way down the track. And you meditate today, and you might sit there and say, oh, I'm not peaceful, what a waste of time. But that's not true. There may be things that arise from this meditation tomorrow or next week as well. Some of the results are quite subtle but long-lasting, and they come up later on. Some of them are cumulative, some of them don't seem to be linked back to any particular meditation, but things can happen where you're a little wiser, more peaceful than before in a certain situation. And it may only be later on in your life you notice that. So don't rush to judge your meditation as hopeless or useless or bad or all that. Be patient with it and appreciate that there's more things going on than you're immediately aware. Maybe trust in the in the practice, trust in the Buddha, the Dhamma, the Sangha, trust in the method, you may find you're not disappointed at all over time, over a long time. Ajahn, another question. I have suffered from my mother's complaints for 40 years. Ever since I was little, I remember at the age of 6 or 7 I started receiving that. Now my sister also has the same tendency to make long complaints about my mother. When I receive their calls with complaints, my heart beats abnormally fast in a very uncomfortable way. I feel that this is poison to my heart. In the past, sometimes after my mother's long complaints, could be 2 or 3 hours for a call, or several calls a day, even when I lived abroad, my mind feels really negative, sometimes feeling like throwing those things out. I feel she was driving me crazy at some point. I wonder if there's a way to deal with this issue. Well, another common experience. How many millions of people in the world complain about their mothers and their relationships with their mothers? It's part of life. So the simple answer is just metta, 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 goodwill, kindness, forgiveness, compassion. Compassion for yourself, compassion for your mum, compassion for the family, the relationships. You just keep coming back to it and take it as a test of your metta barami and all the other baramis that we need to develop in this practice. It's a test, isn't it? And relationships with the people who are closest to us, particularly parents and particularly a mother, because you came from her womb, they're a really good test. So yeah, I know it's not easy because of this long-term relationship. You build up karma, habitual karma, accumulation of reactions, conduct, thoughts, feelings, emotions towards your mother because you hear every day maybe or frequently. And we have all these phrases we say, oh, my mum pushed my button or whatever, and that's that's what mums do. They push your buttons, and they can push your button better than anyone else because they know you. But we're trying to use the Dhamma to deal with this situation. Everybody will be different, so I don't know all the details of yours, but generally establish metta as your starting point. Come back to that. Metta for yourself and metta for your mum. And try not to take ownership of her complaints, if there are complaints, negative comments. Try to reflect on them. But if they've been going on 40 years, well, you should be an expert by now. You should be able to reflect, this is just mum saying her stuff. Mums are never satisfied. They always want their offspring to be better, to be good, to be improved, to do this, to be richer, to be more smart, to be this, to be that. That's very common, isn't it? And if you know your mum, well, you know what to expect, so don't be surprised with the complaints. And obviously know yourself, know your limits, so yeah, sometimes you need a break. So get your rest, get your mental rest, your seclusion. As we practice the Dhamma, then seclusion becomes something that you incorporate into your lifestyle, your retreat time, your seclusion time. Meditation helps there, and you learn to appreciate seclusion, whether it's just a little bit of seclusion during your day, your quiet time, or finding time to go on retreat, go to quiet places. And when you go on retreat, that's the time you can close off the phone, tell your family, I'm going to be away, I won't be in contact, so you get some real seclusion. That can help. And then you also need wisdom, don't you, to deal with close family members who you may interact with daily. You have to reflect on what's going on. Like as parents get older, well, they change for one way or other. They're maybe in more pain, or they're tired, or they're weaker. Maybe their emotions sometimes get the better of them, so you have to respond with compassion. If you notice faults in your mum, maybe reflect back on yourself. Do I have these faults? Do I do this same? Do I have these same habits, bad habits? Do I complain? Do I speak in a negative way? So you turn it around to learn about yourself, rather than just feeling aversion or holding on to thoughts of aversion to your mum. Try to abandon them, but then come back and see, well, do I have this same behaviour in me? Do I complain? Do I have negative thoughts about the people around me? Do I speak in that way? Do I act in that way? Your aim is to try and bring up more mindfulness, more compassion for yourself, your mum. Learn from the experience rather than just get caught into reactions which promote more suffering for yourself. Sometimes lead to clashes or conflicts with your mum or whoever else it may be. So patience, mindfulness, kindness, compassion, wisdom, all the paramis, we need to get cultivate them. And sometimes family members can be our best teachers because they force us to try harder in our practice. Question. Greetings, Ajahn. Recently I noticed that it's not easy for me to develop metta to all beings. No, it's not easy for anyone. And particularly to some animals. Big cockroaches in my bathroom, ants in the kitchen, a bird that poos on my laundry line, especially when it's the summer. Now we have the typhoon season, suddenly these animals all appear inside the house. I only feel disturbed when seeing them appear. Perhaps they're asking for help. It's typhoon season, so they're all coming indoors to get away from the typhoons. So again, starting point, metta, compassion, patience, and then maybe some applied wisdom, different techniques, how to skillfully deal with animals without killing or destroying them. So we can use skillful ways, find skillful ways. Skillful means to obstruct them, barriers. So like living in Thailand, we have kutis, and we have these kutis on stilts, and ants in the monsoon season always want to come up on top of your kuti, so we use to tie oily rags around the base of the stump to stop the ants coming up, or you have a little water moat to stop them coming up. But you have to be diligent, vigilant, because if you have a leaf land on the moat, then it becomes a bridge, and within 1 minute the ants are coming across. Yeah, it's a bit like some kind of medieval battle, and you sort of notice a leaf and then you notice 1,000 ants storming your kuti, and you've got to pick the leaf off, and then you've got the ants stuck in your kuti and the ants outside. It can get quite complex. But the aim is not to kill. You're trying to keep the precepts, or sometimes gentle sweeping, barriers, and sometimes all you can do is endure. You don't have a lot of choice. But before the animals even come, before you encounter them, before the typhoon season begins, start cultivating metta and compassion already. Bring it up in your mind, metta for all the cockroaches, all the ants, all the this, whatever, all the birds who poo. Cultivate the goodwill, the tolerance, because they live in the world. You're not going to get rid of them all. And they don't really know what they're doing, in the sense they don't know they're annoying you, they're just doing their thing. Before they even annoy you or come into your space, cultivate the metta so you're ready to receive them. And then maybe have a few techniques and practices that you can employ. So some things you just keep your place clean, and that discourages them. Sometimes you have to have barriers, sometimes you just have to rely on a lot of patience when you're cleaning up after animals. Everyone has this problem, I think, especially if you live anywhere near the countryside, the forest. Monks, we live in the forest. Spend a lot of your time dealing with creatures, but without hurting them deliberately. You just try and do your best. So, yeah, a lot of metta, a lot of karuna. Last question. Dear Lumpur, thank you for the teachings. By cultivating the 5 strengths of mind, I guess that's the 5 powers, the 5 bala, we should use the mind to contemplate the body. Is this correct? Sort of, sounds quite reasonable. These 5 strengths, faith, saddha, conviction in the Buddha Dhamma Sangha, belief in the practice, that it's worthwhile, that it will lead you to the end of suffering maybe. Virya, persistent effort directed to the practice, cultivating the path, abandoning defilements. Sati, mindfulness, and as you're cultivating the path with virya, then bringing up more and more mindfulness and more continuous mindfulness. When mindfulness becomes more continuous, we develop what we call samadhi, states of calm where the 5 hindrances have been abandoned. The mind is in a wholesome, good state, a refined state that can now be turned to contemplate, to develop the last of these balas, panya, wisdom, which will develop through insight, developing insight into the 3 characteristics: impermanence, unsatisfactoriness, not self, and also insight into the unattractiveness of the body, supagamatthana. This relies both on wisdom, having heard the Dhamma, contemplated the Dhamma, bringing up the Dhamma for reflection, and then also leads to wisdom. But the other powers support as well. So, the effort, the mindfulness, the samadhi support the arising of wisdom, deepen the wisdom we have. So, your wisdom that helps you to uproot defilements, abandon wrong views, abandon craving and attachment. In the beginning, wisdom is not well developed. We hear the Dhamma, and that prompts or triggers our initial understanding of things. Our initial right view is from hearing the Dhamma, reflecting on the Dhamma from what we've heard, what we've discussed. But then through the practice of bringing the mind to reflect, say, on the body, on the impermanent, unattractive nature of the body and the lack of self in this body, that wisdom can start developing more deeply into what we call bhavana maya panya. Coming from the peaceful, calm states of mind we develop, the samadhi we develop, we turn to contemplate the body and see it or know it as not self. Abandon the view that says this body is me, mine, myself, or I am in the body is within me, and all the different views we have based around mind and body. As our wisdom deepens and our insight deepens, we're separating that out. So our thinking towards the body and towards the world, in fact, towards the material world, changes. Now, those changes may be very slow, subtle, sometimes more profound, more quicker, you might say, more startling, more, you might say shocking in a way, but shocking in a good way, where you can sometimes have profound insight into the nature of the body as impermanent, not self, and kind of knock some of the craving and attachment out of your thinking, out of your whole trains of consciousness, because you suddenly realize what you were craving and wanting and liking isn't what you thought. As you develop the reflective ability to reflect on the body as a body, the first foundation of mindfulness, you're coming to know the body as four elements, without an owner. Coming to know the body as something without an owner, as not without a self. The sense of ownership disappears under investigation, and the body is seen more as just, or known more just as elements: earth, air, fire and water. And that leads directly on to contemplation of feeling as well, because obviously if you're focused in on the body and the contemplation of the body as elements, impersonal elements, then also you notice feeling arising and passing away based on the body. And even mental feeling, pleasant, unpleasant feeling, you become more aware of it when you separate mind and body through our practice of contemplation. So the wisdom faculty and the strength of your wisdom increases slowly, quickly or slowly. It doesn't really matter as long as you're going in the right direction. But the wisdom is really the changing of one's view, one's wrong views, and which helps to uproot craving, and particularly craving directed to the body. You realize the body is not worth craving, it's not worth clinging on to, because it's impermanent, it's not self, it's destined to die. We don't live forever. So you're seeing more or less the impermanence in this body all the time, through constant reflection, development of the wisdom faculty. So your whole view towards it changes. You might say it's not as good as it seemed before. When we're young and intoxicated with the body, we tend to get really caught up in it, the way it looks, it feels. As you keep reflecting on it with mindfulness, with samadhi, with insight, you're not so intoxicated with it. You realize the body is destined to get old, get sick and die. So your whole relationship between mind and body changes. But yes, contemplation of the body, when you can, when you're peaceful enough, mindful enough to do it, is very fruitful practice. And I would recommend it. Even if you can't do it for very long, and most of us can't, certainly in the beginning, doesn't matter, just get into a regular practice of contemplating your body, seeing it as impermanent, not self, running through the 32 parts, become familiar with the 32 parts of the body, the four elements. You can even experiment contemplating your body as a corpse, if you find that helps. And you'll find your wisdom, particularly the wisdom faculty, the insight, will deepen through this. Anyway, we've come to the end of our Q&A session tonight, so I'll leave you with those reflections.